Hi, my name is Dan Sapato, and this is my presentation for Arab 150. Today I'm discussing the Western media and the effect that it has on the people of the Western world. What happens here is that the Arab world is a distant place for a lot of us, and quickly we assume that these people are different and a lot of bad things happen. So we look ahead and we see that when it comes to Western opinions, many people feel that the Arab world consists of people that are barbaric and violent, that are always in war with each other, attacking us. We also tend to assume that a lot of these people are poor and that they, do not have any kind of lifestyle that we're used to, that they don't, have jobs or homes, and it simply isn't true. The fact is that Western people have jobs, and so do people of the Arab world. We also quickly assume that they're overly religious. You hear of these stories where religion is skewed in a way and people are taken advantage of in a sake something like ISIS, where people extrapolate ideas and take it too far. And we hear about this in the news all the time. You also hear about suffering from inequality, where the man runs the family and women have no choice in decisions or are so underprivileged that they cannot do anything they want. And all of this leads to the fact that we feel that these people cannot help themselves. So why is this? Well, it comes down to one thing, and that is the media. Now, the media is consisted of a bunch of different kind of things, but first of all, let's talk about the news. In the news, we hear about the same old kind of stories, the violence, the wars, the attacks, and this just tends to happen over and over. So we look at some recent stories, and something here in USA Today is Middle East violence, power struggle complicates investing. Now you would think, oh, investing, how could that be related? But yet here we still have a story where we have these Arab people portrayed as these violent, gun-holding, masked men who simply cannot do anything else. Or in a different story here, we have the U.S. News. In this story, leave the Middle East be. And we discuss that, this Middle Eastern lands and the Arab world is just so full of violence and so full of disagreement that there's nothing we can do about this, and we should just let it go on and not have a factor in it at all. We also see this in books. One of the most prominent books is something that we took from our lecture, Edward Said's Orientalism in 1978. This book gave us the term Orientalism, and it really just is the idea that the Western world is superior and that it's our responsibility to help the Arab world and lift them out of this barbaric, poverty-stricken state that we discussed before. Another form of the media is movies. And this is another example that was brought up in the lecture, but is an example that I've seen before and is definitely always brought up in this issue. And this movie is Aladdin. Now, most people would think, oh, this is a Walt Disney movie. It's a child's movie. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's quickly seen that that's not the case. Now, watching it as a child, it's a nice story. But quickly you see, even with an opening music, that this is a very biased kind of movie, and that the protagonists are these American-seeming, light-skinned people, and the villains are these giant turban-wearing, dark-skinned, heavy accent, kind of violent people. And so what happens here is that the children right away are getting this idea that these Arabic people are somehow the villains and scary, and we shouldn't trust them in any way. So why does this happen? Well, you see, it's simple. Violence sells. People don't want to hear about the average guy in Saudi Arabia going off to a day of work. They want to hear about the stories that could affect them, the wars, the attacks. And so what ends up happening is that CNN is going to glorify a story all day about an attack, and they're not going to hear anything else. But what does this do? Well, what ends up happening is that the Western world views the Arabs as the others. It's an us versus them scenario. And what happens is that all Arabs are placed into a single stereotype. We take all of these different countries, these different cultures, these different people, and we believe that they are all these violent people that will never get along. So what? Why should we care about this at all? We can suddenly dislike these people, right? Well, it turns out that there could definitely be some benefits. First of all, we got to worry about our safety here. There's a lot of disagreement here, and these Middle Eastern people don't like us too much. So if we could, learn their culture, we could possibly get along a little more. Maybe we won't have to worry about as many attacks on the home front. But also, we need to learn their society to help fix their society. We step into their lands, we blow up plenty of things, and we try to set up our own form of government that we believe is right. And these people just hate us for it. So if we could, understand their ways, maybe we could find a nice middle ground. We can cooperate instead of enforce all of our rules. And that could be wildly more effective than, bullying our way through it. But also, more than fixing their country or defending ours, we also can benefit this economically. Being able to talk with them and discuss things means that we could now have more trade. We could have a better form for all the oil that we want in their area. And also, we can severely cut down our military budget. We spend incredible amounts of money each and every month, and maybe it could be cut down a good amount if we didn't need as many, drones flying over and passing through the lands. On a slightly different note, you might think, well, what are the Arab people doing about this? Are they helping themselves in the media? And the answer is yes. It turns out that there's, plenty of media in their lands, and one of the biggest ones is Al Jazeera. And this news outlet does all kinds of things. They do news, they have TV channels, they have websites, they manage a lot of different smaller companies. And so what ends up happening here is that they tackle plenty of issues in the Arab world, ones that aren't even that popular, ones that anger their own people. But sadly, as big as a company as they are and as prominent as they are in the area, I've personally never even heard of them. And I think that that's a statement that stands true for many Americans and many other Western countries. While they make a great amount of presence, and companies as big as CNN, who we have heard of, cite them plenty of times, it doesn't mean that we're going to directly hear what they have to say. So, sadly, while they are a very large company and do have a great realm of influence, they don't make a really big impact at all on our home front. However, this really could have a nice impact at home for them. Even if their media isn't reaching all the way over here, it does reach at home. There's a lot of listeners, there's a lot of readers, and this could have some benefits. Now, this spreads awareness. It brings up issues. People can see what's happening in their country, the nearby country, and around the world. But also, it creates a sense of community. These people share news, they hear about each other, they become concerned for each other. And through these stories, these people can begin to see that maybe they're not so different, and that, maybe Syria doesn't have such a problem with them. And this could cause some peace and solve a lot of the problems that we're trying to fix there with our military. But also, this can be used for propaganda. Now, propaganda is usually a scary word. A lot of people think of it as brainwashing. However, this could be influenced by the government in positive ways. If we need some peace or we need a certain mentality to be spread, this can be done. When there's news that reaches so many homes and so many people, it's going to be able to persuade them and change their minds on things. So what do we want? Why are we concerned about these things? Well, we need to ensure that we have our safety and that we can be safe at our homes, but also we need to benefit from this economically. And once we secure these things, we always like to spread things. It's a human way that we always are. We always want to spread the benefits and the good things that we have if we can. So what can be done exactly? Well, we can't go expecting a ban on media. We're not going to be able to not allow writers to discuss things, not let movies talk about Arab people in a negative light. That's something that's just too controlling. We're people of freedom. We want free expression. So that's certainly not going to work. But we can do this with education. And really what happens here is that there doesn't need to be a formal education. We don't need classes that say this is the Arab world and this is why it's great. But we can filter it in a little bit. We don't hear anything really about the Arab world when it comes to our math classes or our history classes even that much. And so if we mention, oh, well, this was discovered by the Arab people, or oh, this is a cultural aspect of the Arab world, maybe then the children can grow up and think that these Arab people aren't scary, but they're other people too, and they do the same things that we do. Also, we can take a little bit of hope in the movies. Maybe that we don't restrict the movies, but we could just have more movies that portray the Arab world as a normal place. You don't find a ton of movies in the US about average people in the different countries of the Arab world doing much of anything. You only see these violent movies where a hero is going to charge in and battle it up against them. So maybe we can find some changes there. Anyway, here are some of my sources. Thanks a lot for the time.